Most people who visit Paris never actually see it. They see the postcard, the Eiffel Tower photo, the café with the wicker chairs, the 10-minute Louvre selfie before the crowd pushes them forward. But somewhere underneath all of that, there's a version of this city that barely anyone stops long enough to notice. A version with locked gardens, forgotten tunnels, and a sound that only exists at 5 in the morning, right before the boulangeries open and the whole city still smells like rain and butter. This is not the Paris from the guidebooks. This is the Paris that changes how you see everything else. Over the next few minutes, you're going to walk through streets most tourists rush past without a second glance. You'll stand in a courtyard where a king once hid from his own guards. You'll hear a language of bells that used to warn an entire neighborhood of danger. And somewhere near the end, there's a rooftop most Parisians don't even know exists. One that makes the entire skyline feel like it was built just for the person standing there. So don't just watch this. Imagine yourself inside it, because by the time this is over, you're going to want to book the flight. The Marais before the city wakes start before sunrise, in a part of the city where the streetlights are still on and the pavement is slick and quiet. This is the Marais, and at this hour it belongs entirely to the bakers. You can smell it before you see it, warm and slightly sweet, drifting out through cracked doors while the ovens work through the night. Somewhere down a narrow side street, a man in flour-dusted sleeves is pulling trays of croissants that won't be sold for another 2 hours, and if you knock politely and smile, sometimes he'll hand you one anyway, still too hot to hold properly. The Marais used to be swampland, which is exactly what its name means, and for centuries it was considered the unfashionable edge of the city. Then aristocrats built mansions here to escape the crowded center, and those same mansions are now hiding some of the strangest little museums in Europe, tucked behind courtyards that look like nothing from the street. Push open the right unmarked door and you might find a collection of 19th century love letters, or a violin maker's workshop that's been running since before the revolution. Hidden landmarks beneath famous streets, but that's only the beginning. Because just a short walk away, the city starts telling an entirely different story. Notre Dame still stands wrapped in scaffolding, healing from the fire that shocked the world in 2019. But right beside it, almost nobody looks down. There's a small bronze star embedded in the pavement, marked Points Row. Every distance in France is measured from this exact spot. Every road sign, every map, every how many kilometers to Paris answer on Earth technically starts right here, under people's feet, and most of them walk over it without ever noticing. There's a courtyard not far from there, tucked behind the Palais Royal, where the arcades are lined with old bookshops, coin dealers, and a perfume maker who's been mixing scents by hand for longer than most of the surrounding buildings have existed. In the center, hundreds of striped black and white columns rise out of the ground at different heights, like something between a chessboard and a ruin. Kids jump between them. Office workers eat lunch on the low ones. Almost nobody visiting for the first time expects to find something so strange and playful sitting quietly behind a royal palace, and that's exactly why it works. Legend says the gardens once hosted duels at dawn, aristocrats settling arguments before the city fully woke up, and standing there in the early light, it's easy to believe it. Paris after dark along the Seine, what happens here after dark, is almost impossible to believe unless you've felt it yourself. Walk along the Seine once the sun drops low enough to turn the water orange, and the whole riverbank transforms. Local teenagers bring speakers and sit along the stone edges. Someone always has wine. Someone always has a guitar that's slightly out of tune, and somehow it doesn't matter. Bridges you photographed an hour earlier in daylight suddenly glow gold underneath, and the reflections stretch out across the current like the city is folding itself in half. This isn't a show put on for visitors. This is simply what Tuesday night looks like for the people who live here. And if you sit down on the steps and stay quiet, no one will treat you like an outsider. There's one place almost nobody talks about, hidden 2 floors above a bookstore near the river. It's called Shakespeare and Company, and the version most tourists know is just the ground floor. Shelves packed so tightly you have to turn sideways to move through them, but climb the narrow staircase in the back, and you'll find a reading room with a piano nobody's allowed to play unless they're genuinely good, and a typewriter sitting by the window where strangers have left notes to future strangers for decades. Writers have slept on cots between these shelves in exchange for a few hours of work a day, a tradition that started with the original owner giving shelter to broke poets after the Second World War. Somewhere in that back room, there's a wall covered in photographs of writers who once slept there before anyone knew their names. Montmartre and the soul of old Paris, just when you think you've gotten the full picture. The city pulls you somewhere you wouldn't expect, up a hill in the north where the streets get steeper and quieter and the crowds thin out completely. Montmartre used to be its own village, separate from Paris entirely, and it still feels that way. Vineyards grow on the hillside here, one of the last working vineyards inside a major European capital, producing just enough wine each year for a small harvest festival that fills the streets with music and strangers linking arms. Artists still set up easels in the small square near the top, and while most of them are painting for tourists now, a few are genuinely brilliant, quietly working on something for themselves between commissions. Climb higher, past the funicular most people ride without realizing they could walk the steps instead, and the Sacre-Coeur appears white and enormous against the sky. Sit on the steps below it at golden hour, and the entire city spreads out beneath you, rooftops catching the last light, and for a moment nobody around you is talking. They're just watching. The underground secrets and hidden rooftops just when you think the city has shown you everything it has. Paris pulls one more surprise from underneath itself. Literally, beneath the streets, roughly 20 meters down, lie tunnels stretching for hundreds of kilometers, the leftover quarries that built the city above them. Part of that network holds the remains of 6 million people, bones stacked with an almost eerie precision along the walls. It sounds like something from a horror story, but walking through it feels strangely peaceful, cool air, dim lighting, and complete silence except for your own footsteps against stone that's been there since before the French Revolution. And then there's the rooftop. Not the Eiffel Tower observation deck, not the Arc de Triomphe, somewhere quieter. A small terrace attached to a department store near the Opera House, free to access, almost entirely unmarked, where you can stand above the rooftops with a coffee in your hand and watch the entire skyline unfold, zinc roofs stretching to the horizon, the Sacre-Coeur glowing white on its hill, pigeons circling somewhere below your feet instead of above your head. Most tourists never learn it exists. The ones who do tend to come back more than once. A city best discovered slowly, Paris, was never meant to be rushed through in a single afternoon, checked off a list, and left behind. It's a city built in layers, and every layer rewards the people willing to slow down and actually look. The Eiffel Tower will always be there for the photo, but the real memory, the one that stays with you years later, is usually something smaller. A warm croissant handed to you by a stranger before sunrise. A guitar slightly out of tune by the river. A rooftop nobody told you about. If this journey made you want to feel that for yourself, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe if you want more places like this one, and tell us in the comments which corner of Paris you're adding to your bucket list.